Okay, we've got all of these thoughts to reframe. There you have it, 10 thoughts on the wall. And what belief are we going to challenge today? What belief? This is today's belief. The best version of myself is in the past. Okay, I got my handy dandy list of 20 questions. So we're going to go through and we're going to see what questions might be helpful as we attempt to challenge this thought, this belief that the best version of myself is in the past. And at the top of my sheet, the very first category of question is, what is the evidence? The first question I'm going to be using to challenge this belief is, am I confusing a thought with a fact? I think the most helpful place to start with this question is like, why do I believe it? What leads me to think that the best version of myself is in the past? And I think probably the first thing that's getting me thinking that is a couple feelings. One, the feeling that I'm kind of stuck, that I'm at a place where I feel as though I'm not growing the way that I'd like to be growing. I feel like I'm like looping or repeating the same lessons over and over. There are things that I remember about previous versions of myself that I feel like are not true about the current version of myself. So for an example, I think of when I was a young teenager and being a writer was what I really wanted to do. I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I believed that I could. If you could have seen little like 13, 14, 15-year-old Alicia run around with her notebook thinking she was going to write the next great Canadian novel, writing 50,000 words first time I did NaNoWriMo. Like there was like a drive and conviction that I had then that I feel like I don't have now. But if we're going to pretend like that is a fact, like that I had some drive or ambition or self-confidence in the past that I don't have now, then we also have to bring other facts into evidence. This idea of being the best version of myself is inherently this kind of holistic view of self, right? Like you imagine that the best version of yourself is not the best on one particular axis, but that when you look at all of your qualities in aggregate, have you made improvements? Like, am I the best version of myself currently, or was it somewhere previously on my timeline? And while I don't think that human progress is linear, I think that progress often looks all loopy and squirrely. There are a lot of things that I am objectively better at now than I was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I'm gonna say I'm a better cook. I hold more responsibility now than I probably have at any previous point in my life. I've improved a lot as a sibling and friend in terms of being more empathetic, less judgmental, more curious. So like it is very possible for me to chart growth on multiple axes and think that, okay, there are a lot of ways in which I am better now than I am in the past. So that statement that the best version of myself is in the past doesn't feel like a fact. It's definitely a thought. So we're gonna just write that down on this note here. There's another question I can use here, specifically because I've used the word past here, and the question is, am I predicting the future instead of experimenting with it? And the answer here is unequivocally yes. Imagining that the best version of myself is in the past kind of prevents me from imagining that potentially the best version of myself is somewhere in the future, and ideally it is. Like ideally as I age, I'm going to continue to learn and grow and develop and become better versions of myself over time. So that one seems fairly straightforward. All right, this question's an interesting one. It's, am I concentrating on my weaknesses and forgetting my strengths? So I mentioned before that part of what prompted this belief was focusing on qualities that I feel like I previously had that I don't have anymore, or things, skills that haven't developed, or maybe I've gone backwards. By thinking this way, I'm not giving myself credit for the areas where I have made improvements. So we've already mentioned a couple, right? Like cooking and my relationships and bearing responsibilities. But you know what? There are two areas that I think that I've made a lot of strides forward in that I wasn't even thinking about when I was a teenager. Okay, one of those is just living with anxiety, but still being able to have a good life and manage the responsibilities of my life. I remember being in high school and like feeling nervous about the time when I would have to move out, because there were so many things that made me anxious that I thought, you know, one day I'm gonna move out, I'm gonna live on my own, and I'm gonna be too anxious to go to the grocery store and I'll just starve. Like I will just straightforwardly not be able to walk into a store and buy food, and I will starve. It's pretty extreme thinking, but I genuinely did have doubts in my ability to live independently. But here I am as an adult. I go grocery shopping regularly, and actually because of the love of cooking that I have, I like coming up with the list. I like executing the list, like going out, finding things, ticking things off, coming home, unloading the groceries, putting things away, prepping food. The whole process, like if we look at it as a whole and not just as individual bits, I do like it. The other thing, and maybe the thing that I'm the most proud of, is my relationship with my brother. It really wasn't until we started living together that we got close. And in the 4 years plus that we've been living together, we've both been through a lot of change, a lot of transition, a lot of growth, and we've been able to grow together and build a home together. And I am so proud of that. So like, take that, 17-year-old Alicia. Look at how far we've come. There's one more question I want to use to challenge this thought, and that last question is, am I assuming there is nothing I can do to change my situation? Let's take this belief at face value. Let's say that at this current moment in my life, that I am not the best version of me, that the best version of myself is still in the past. I think that we have some good evidence to disprove that, but like, let's just pretend. Even if it was true that the best version of myself at this current moment in time is somewhere in my past, that doesn't mean that that's always going to be true. As we just observed, this thought is predicting the future, and in doing so, it's robbing me of any agency that I might have to change my situation. Here's what I know to be true. Here's a fact, okay? I know that I have gotten better at things over time. That is definitively true, and it's true across multiple skills in multiple areas of my life. So even, let's say in this moment that I've done a lot of backsliding and that I'm not the best version of myself, that doesn't mean that I couldn't be the best version of myself in the future. That doesn't mean that I couldn't put my mind to it and work to develop new skills, to continue to learn and grow. And what this thought does is let me off the hook for any future growth. This thought is the equivalent of giving up. I have another adjacent thought that I wrote down in my journal, that I will never be more than I am. In fact, I've had that lyric from Waitress in my head. You know, what if I'll never see myself ever be anything more than what I've already become? But that's a what if. I can't answer a what if. If I want to be the best version of myself, I know the best version of myself is one that keeps trying. So that's a little garden of challenges to this one negative thought. And actually, when you put it in the center like that, this is kind of turning into a pretty flower. I think I like the imagery. I'll end with one observation from my journal as I was trying to challenge this thought. I wrote, how did this belief serve you? Trying to protect myself from the shame of trying and failing. I'm imagining a certain future instead of an uncertain one, even if the certain future is negative. Let's face it, the idea that you're going to be learning and growing your whole life can sound kind of exhausting, because growth is uncomfortable. Sometimes negative ideas can feel more comfortable because they have a certainty and a self-assuredness about them. They seem to offer a single, easy answer, but if I know anything about life, it's that One single answer is never sufficient. One single emotion or thought or action is never sufficient, because life is just more complicated than that. But we've still got a whole host of negative thoughts to tackle, so I'll see you again here next time. And until then, my friends and fellow VEDSies, I will see all of you tomorrow.